Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Politics Tonight, and the conversation tonight is centered on the concerns expressed by the Federal Executive Council over rising cost of goods and services. And I've been speaking with Omoruyi, Edoigiawerie, a startup attorney, financial and economic expert. Mr. Omoruyi, thank you so much for staying with us. Before we move on to other issues, let's quickly look at the 2024 budget recently signed into law by the President. With this budget, do you see a quick intervention and impact of the budget on the economy?
Oh, yes. So, for instance, there is a reduction in expenses on recurrent expenditure, which means that government is tying its belt. Can they do more? Yes, I would wish that more is done. But at least they've shown that, look, we need to tighten our belt. They should tighten it more. But I want to see non-oil exports receive more support. We cannot continue to fixate on oil. Oil, this budget, oil still has the large chunk of projected revenue, right? And then followed by non-oil exports. But it is hoped that a time will come when non-oil exports, revenue from non-oil products and exports will give us some semblance of serious buffer that will give oil revenue a run for its money. The problem has never really been whether or not what is budgeted is sufficient. It is always whether or not what is budgeted will get to source. Implementation is our biggest challenge. If we budget 10 billion for XYZ, will that 10 billion get to XYZ? Or will it be reduced to 500 million by the time it gets to XYZ? If government focuses on ensuring adequate oversight on implementing this budget of renewed hope, ensuring that monies don't go to personal pockets, ensuring that whatever is earmarked for projects are actually done. And then let's have an overhaul of our budgeting system. We need to look again and see if this system of budgeting that we have today, is it sustainable? Is it working for us? Do we need to rejig our system? Some of the things that we need to look at, right?
You think we need to rejig our system?
We may need to. I have said to you, if we stay here and we want this place to get cooler than it is now, and we continue to do the same thing without looking at how we could maybe add an additional air conditioner or do one or two other things, and then we expect the place to get cooler, what magic do you expect the existing system to give that they haven't given? So it's important that we now look at other ways to think outside the box. We have a digital economy. Our digital economy is the future. The future, fortunately, is now. We must invest in the digital economy. We must ensure, if you look at the data of the contribution of Nigerians in the developed world and the revenue that their country, the value in revenue of their contribution, you'll be shocked. Imagine that level of involvement and support in our economy. But they would not come, and rightly so, if you do not create an enabling environment for them to thrive. So the thing is, people go where the grass is greener. If you don't make the place comfortable, if this place were not comfortable for me, I won't come a second time.
All right. So, pardon me, we'll get back to the issue of budgets, but let's quickly look at, let's get back to tax review and, some update from the presidency. And that's the Presidential Council on Industrial Revitalization, which was set up in October, and the Presidential Council on Fiscal Policy and Tax Review set up in July 2023. Now the President has mandated the Presidential Council on Industrial Revitalization, as well as the Presidential Council on fiscal reform and tax policy to review, or rather to fast-track their report and recommendations and come up with some recommendations. How important are these committees and what are your expectations?
I said earlier when I was talking about tax, we have a serious taxation problem in this country. Double taxation is a big killer of businesses. And if we do not harmonize our tax regime, right? And you see, taxation, so we need to look at it from two fronts. The first is revenue as a result of a better taxing system. And then ensuring that taxing does not stifle growing businesses and businesses in general. And then creating a balance of taxation, right? Where you are taxed based on your income, right? Creating a system where really the wealthier you get, the more tax you pay. And so that creates a buffer. But a harmonized approach is what I really want to see. Let's harmonize our taxes at all levels, state, federal, state, local, and come up with a clear classification between 5 and 10, nothing more. And then work out a system, a sharing formula across. If they do that, in fact, they can do that with tax. And so that I know that if I have paid for XYZ, nobody is going to come to tomorrow to ask me to pay for the same thing because I'm within a particular radius. And then we also need to look at certain taxes and ask ourselves, why are these taxes still in existence? We must update. One of the most constant things in life is change. We can't stay in the same place. There are certain taxes that don't make any sense. And so look at them, revamp them. And you will see that businesses will get a breather. Borrowing from Mr. President, let businesses breathe. It's very important. And taxes are one way that you let businesses breathe. And then tax implementation, tax revenue implementation. We must now ensure that our taxes are used for the benefit of taxpayers to improve our system. And so when people see their money in action, it is easier for you to elicit their commitment and support. So one of the things that the Oedele panel, the tax reform panel, is going to do is to ensure that there's a harmonized system. And if they don't come up with a tax harmonization approach, they'll be failing before starting. If you come up with new ways of taxing people without harmonizing a system, you're only going to be increasing the problem. And remember, Nigerians are very ingenious people. The more you increase, the more they build ingenuity to circumvent the process, especially when it is stifling them. We are survivors. And what government does not realize is that as survivors, if your survival depends on undercutting the system, you do that. But we're also people who fall in line very easily. Fuel price has gone up. We are falling in line because we don't have a choice. And so if government puts measures in place where people see the result of what they're being asked to pay, then you will get more support. If I know that if I pay for XYZ tax and that's it for the year, I will be happy to pay it. But when I know that I paid this, I'm not sure how many people will show up in my door. It becomes a problem. For the industrialization committee, their work is set out for them. Create an enabling environment for indigenous production, power, security, infrastructure support. We don't do that. I waste your time. If we don't fix power, indigenous production will continue to be a mirage. And the challenge we have is that we must see certain things as integral to our next level and not bypass them and not gerrymander around it or create, palliatives around it. We have a power emergency in this country. Fix it. Why can't we fix power? But also, what the public must also understand, and as one thing the president has continued to say, is that every impactful and sustainable change comes with a solid measure of sacrifice. So there's going to be sacrifice that the people will have to, something has got to give. But at the end of the day, if people make that sacrifice and they don't get value, you won't get them to make a sacrifice a second time.
Right. So before I take you up on one of our discussions last year, yesterday on the program, we discussed the further depreciation of the Naira. But for you, as a startup attorney, a businessman, a financial analyst, how is the depreciation of the Naira impacting the informal sector, which employs a large majority of Nigerians?
Value of Naira yesterday is not the value of Naira today. I pay workers in Naira. So in simple English, the person I used to pay 50,000, the value of that 50,000 to that person is now like 20,000 or 15,000. So I either have to increase. If I increase that person's salary, I must increase my production, my expenditure. I must increase my production cost. That increases my production cost. I must now increase my revenue cost. If I increase my revenue cost, the end user suffers. But that's a buffer for me to continue to keep myself, because if I cannot pay, the staff will leave. Now, what are the things that have led to this constant depreciation of Naira? Everything we are buying in dollars. Because we are largely importing. I have said commodify. Commodification of a product. Look for something, invest in it. Give government back it with serious political will, and then promote it for export. That way you attract FX. Besides crude oil, what is bringing FDI into this country? And crude oil revenue has so many things that are tied to it, so really you can't. But everybody is changing the little Naira they have, the dollar. Every businessman that has a considerable market, changing the little Naira he has to dollar. Dollar is becoming scarce, shooting up. Naira now is chasing it. Did you ever think that the day will come when we'll buy dollar for 1,000 plus? It's happening. Dangerous.
So, all right.
If you do not fix the issues around indigenous production, and Naira will continue to be weak. If government does not promote a product for exports, or does not intentionally push to get investment, if we can't attract FX, the little we have, we will spend. The Naira we have will chase fewer dollars, which will mean that it will never become balanced.
Right. I mean, fuel scarcity has also been marked as one of the many factors responsible for rising cost of goods and services. But now that we have two refineries working, what is the impact of this development on the economy?
So we hope that quantity, the market is open. So when there are more products, what happens is that it drives down the cost, because people will have options. And if you look today, if you want to look at filling stations when you drive around Lagos, and I'm sure same everywhere, some filling stations have very long queues, some don't. You drive in and buy. And that's not because the quality of the fuel is different, but because some are selling at a cheaper price. Right? And, they will tell you, even if it's just 20 Naira difference, it adds up. Now, that's what competition does to a market. Open up the market, enable more players in that sector, take away monopoly, and then flood the market. And I'm hoping that that is what the Dangote refinery will do, even though Dangote refinery is not built for just the Nigerian market.
Absolutely.
And so he has a right to say, I'm going to only sell this percentage to Nigeria and then to other countries, right? But he must understand that he's first Nigerian, and Nigeria has a considerable stake in that refinery. And so you produce for the Nigerian market. The Port Harcourt refinery, I believe, is back on.
Absolutely. That's commenced operations.
NNPC is saddled with running that. NNPC has become a private entity, so hopefully the challenges that come with government or bureaucracy have been cut out and it's now a business, right? So we hope that NNPC would also serve as an indigenous competitor, Dangote. That way you are able to have a balance and you don't have a price monopoly arrangement, right? But then you also have those who are importing. So everybody, at the end of the day, what will happen is that they will be compelled to crash their prices to serve the market. Because people will now be able to pick and choose. But where you have little fuel, everybody is rushing for what is little. And so any amount you sell, people will buy.
So as we wrap up tonight, what more reforms do you think government needs to adopt to revive the economy and stabilize the naira?
Foreign direct investment is very important. In the last 1 year, barely 1%, very 1% contribution to our GDP, and that's not good enough. Nigeria is the largest black market in the world. 200 and something million people consuming. And we are churning out money to buy things, to bring back and consume. And we are not producing anything that will bring money into the country. That's dangerous. Promote indigenous production. So this committee, for instance, you have to ensure that they do what they ought to do to promote indigenous production. Governments must show not just the political will, but the right plans towards execution. And then impact assessment. Let's not reinvent the wheel. We don't need more committees. The ones we have, the policies we have, ensure that they see the light of the day. So, for instance, healthcare is becoming, pharmaceutical care is becoming expensive because a lot of the big names are checking out. So the cost of drugs are going from 0 to 100. How do you bridge that? You need to either bring them back or promote indigenous production. That is qualitative. We have what it takes to produce and take care of ourselves. But if we get the right support and government is intentional about ensuring it and promoting that indigenous production, we'll see it grow. The same thing we see in the tech and innovation ecosystem. What do we see? You see that young boy in Benin, in Emeora, who learns with crude mechanisms and then has the opportunity of getting a laptop, and before you know it, he builds one app. And before you know what is happening, somebody in one developed part of the world has seen him and snatched him away. And he's going to develop that person's country. That's talent that could have built a solution that will keep us here. But if you don't create an enabling environment for that boy to have a chance at life, then what happens? The talent upon discovery will continue to leave our shores. So
it all boils down to creating an enabling environment?
Oh, yes. Not just for investors, but for people locally.
For locals. All right. Thank you so much. I mean, it's been an interesting conversation with you as always. Thank you so much for your perspectives on the program tonight. I've been speaking with Omoruyi Edoigiawerie, a startup attorney, financial and economic expert, as we focus on the concerns expressed by the Federal Executive Council over rising cost of goods and services in Nigeria. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you for having me.